Hello, this is Dr. Dennis Bielfeldt of the Price School of Theology. Today we're going to talk about Descartes. Descartes. And the name, of course, is spelled this way. Descartes was born in 1596. He lived to 1650. He was a wonderful mathematician, an excellent natural philosopher, and an awfully good metaphysician. But if we want to list him in order, I would list him that way. Great mathematician, wonderful natural philosopher, and a good metaphysician. He was born in La Haye, France. He entered a Jesuit college in La Fléche in 1607, and he remained there until about 1614, and he studied there what students studied. He would have studied Latin and Greek grammar, the classical poets, Cicero, Aristotle. He would have studied mathematics, and he would have certainly been exposed to the works of Plato, the ancient atomists, and the ancient skeptics as well. Now, as we talk about Descartes, of course, we could spend months and years talking about all aspects of his thought. What we really want to concentrate on in this lecture are those things in Descartes' thought that are deeply relevant for the theological enterprise. So I'll be talking about those things primarily. And of course, Descartes comes in a time, 1650, and we kind of left off last time in the early 17th century, so we're making it there. But notice we haven't talked about any major philosophers really between the time of Occam and Descartes. There were great thinkers in those days, of course, but in the history of philosophy, historians of philosophy, this is really kind of the tendencies to sort of leave off, I guess, if you will, with the work of Occam, and then kind of pick it up again, if you will, with the work of Descartes and the foundations of modern philosophy. So that's kind of the way it works. Anyway, Descartes came to question, after a while, his education at the Jesuit school, particularly the Aristotelian components of that education. So he came to have real critical questions about the notion of substantial form, about real qualities, and about prime matter. Now, you'll remember that for Aristotle, he was a hylomorphist, right? And he believed that everything that is formed matter. So you take the realm of potentiality and you determine it in certain ways, and that's an actually existing being. The actualization out of potentiality is formed matter for Aristotle. And of course, if you remember right, and if you think about what Aquinas believed as well, the intellect, of course, abstracts the sensible species and the intelligible species as well from that which is outside of us. And the active intellect then impresses it upon the potential intellect, and we know an object in the world. Very nice. Well, Descartes believed that a lot of this metaphysical stew that he had inherited was actually unsupported either by reason or by any other organs of knowledge. And so he wanted to begin, if you will, ars nova, right, from the beginning, and try to, understand things from a new point of view, not relying upon the tradition. Well, of course, we can say that, but of course, ideas do have history, and Descartes was, of course, convinced that what we have in nature are, of course, bodies in motion. This is called the corpuscular theory, right? That nature is made up of bodies, and that these are infinitely divisible. And Of course, in this way of thinking, this corpuscular theory, a fellow by the name of Thomas Hobbes, of course, over in England, was advocating the same kind of thing. This has a history. Corpuscular theory goes back to ancient atomism that he was exposed to in his schooling. So, of course, one can argue, well, how new is Descartes, actually? Is he picking up on some older views? Is it just that he's siding with the ancient atomists over the peripatetic school of Aristotle? So you can get into those questions with Descartes quite quickly. But he did believe that all things were made up of bodies in motion. This is part of his, his philosophy. It's fundamental to his philosophy. And of course, because these bodies are infinitely divisible, you couldn't say that he would be an adherent of classical atomism. That's not probably the case. But certainly the idea that all things are made of bodies is, in that way, like the atomists. His meditations, which we'll talk about mostly in these lectures, probably derive from a Latin thesis that he wrote in 1629. And here, his principles of physics are already in place. And what are those principles of physics? Well, that the nature of matter is extension. Extension. That is, the essence of matter is of extension. That there is another nature thing, and that is the nature of thought, right? So you have matter, which has extension, and you have thought. You have mind, if you will, that thinks, right? So he has the res extensa, extended thing, and the res cogitans, thinking thing, right? Already in place as well is his idea that God is at work preserving the universe. Already by 1629, he had conceived a type of mind-body causal interactionism, and I'll explain all of those things. And also he had come to a definite view on the ontology, or the being, of sense qualities. He writes his principles in 1641, and there's a nice quote from this. He says, "Thus the whole of philosophy is like a tree. The roots are metaphysics, the trunk is physics, and the branches emerging from the trunk are all the other sciences, which may be reduced to three principal ones, namely medicine, mechanics, and morals." 3 M's, right? By morals, I understand the highest and most perfect moral system, which presupposes a complete knowledge of the other sciences and is the ultimate level of wisdom. So, very much important for Descartes is the question of morality. And we're going to be talking about this in regard to his so-called dualism, which we'll be attending to in the very next lecture. So I'm Dr. Dennis Bielfeldt of the Christ School of Theology, and I'll be right back to talk more about Descartes. Thank you.